Hey there YouTube, SQ here, and we are back again with another tier list. After our previous tier list where we ranked all the 6Ps in the game, it seems like everybody really liked that idea and they wanted me to do more. So here we are again, and today we're going to be talking about the Far Slashes in Guilty Gear Strive. Now, the thing about Far Slashes compared to 6Ps is that I don't think there's really a bad Far Slash in this game. There's just some Far Slashes that aren't as good. I think most of the Far Slashes are actually pretty functional for what they're supposed to do. However, with that said, there are still definitely some Far Slashes that are better than others. So we're going to go through and rank all of the Far Slashes. Now, for the most part, what we're going to be thinking about is these Far Slashes in a vacuum. We're not going to think about the rest of the character's kit as much. It's more so like if you just took the Far Slash away from the character, how good is it? And how many other characters would want that Far Slash as a part of their kit? So we're mostly going to be looking at like hitboxes, we're going to be looking at frame data, we're going to be looking at, how far does the move reach, stuff like that. And I'm going to be letting the chat decide what order we talk about the characters in. So somebody go ahead and mention a character and I'll do the first one. Kai's Far Slash is... Oh, okay. I think like some people won't like believe me when I say this, but I think his Far Slash is like the top of the middle tier. I don't think it's actually like that good. It has a couple things going for it. Mainly like, obviously it's a little bit disjointed as of this patch, which is pretty good. 12 frame startup. Actually, wait, it's only -5 on block. Only has 13 frames of recovery. I feel like whenever I watch Kai's Far Slash, it doesn't go as far as I think it should. I feel like Kai's usually have more success with like 2S or something, but I guess it is actually pretty good. Maybe it belongs like the bottom of this tier then. Because I do feel like it doesn't actually have as much range as you think it would, and being 12 frame startup is a little bit weaker. You'll notice that most of the Far Slashes kind of fall around like the 11 frame or 10 frame startup. And then there's a couple that are slower, which is notably bad, and then there's a couple that are faster, which is notably good. Yeah, I guess it is pretty good. I just feel like I see Kai's mostly use like 6H and neutral and 2S, but it's a pretty good button for sure. Faust's Far Slash is also probably around that same spot, I think. It is pretty good. I believe it's 11 frames startup, if I'm not mistaken. No, it's 12 frames. Okay. 20 frames of recovery, -8 on block. It does have a pretty nice hitbox, and it goes really far. It's like one of the farther reaching Far Slashes in the game. However, there is a problem, and this hitbox doesn't really show it that well, but his Far Slash does have like an extended hurt box on the startup, so it's actually pretty easy to stuff him out of it, which is why I don't think it belongs like super high on the list. And only having 2 active frames is pretty bad, because that means that like you have to be real particular with your timing if you're trying to like stop someone's approach or something. But it is pretty good, so I'd probably put Faust up here around where Kai's at, just because of the range on it and because it is relatively disjointed during its active frames, just not before startup. Giovanna, I feel like Giovanna is also up in this tier. I was actually kind of surprised when I looked at her frame data, because it's actually really good when you look at the frame data on her Far Slash. So 9 frame startup, that's as fast as Far Slashes come. They only go up to 9 frames, which is really good. 16 frame of recovery is not that much. It's pretty hard to whiff punish. And it's only -4 on block, which is crazy. I think this might actually be the best Far Slash on block as far as I know. I don't know if there's one that's better than this. I hope not. And also something else that makes it hard to whiff punish is the fact that it's so active because it's 3 different hits. It's pretty hard to time your button to successfully hit her after she's done swinging her feet. Because there's a lot of times where you try to whiff punish it and you're too early and you just swing into it like a spinning fan blade. So I think that's really good about it too. The only downsides is it doesn't actually reach that far, which she doesn't mind that too much because she has a good dash, right? Like usually she's gonna be doing dash Far Slash, so that kind of makes up for the lack of range. But again, we're looking at this in a vacuum, not really the rest of the kit the character has. So it doesn't have the greatest range and it's not disjointed at all, but I think it is still a pretty strong Far Slash. I would actually probably say it's the strongest one we've talked about. I think the active frames and the frame data on block alone is just super good about it. Any character that just has fast movement would like to have this type of Far Slash, just because you could threaten space very effectively with just your movement, and it makes up for the lack of range that it normally has. It is true that multi-hit moves are easier to IB or IBFD. However, her multi-hit moves are very fast. I feel like it's pretty hard to actually react to Far Slash happening and then start instant blocking it. By the time you recognize that Far Slash is happening, you might instant block like the last hit of it. So I don't think that's as big of a weakness for this move as it is for some of the other multi-hit moves in the game. Vikings Far Slash is going to be our first Far Slash that I'm putting in top 5. This Far Slash is really, really good. It's like probably the best like close range Far Slash in the game. The frame rate on it is crazy good. It's very good. It's 9 frame startup, which again, that's as fast as Far Slash has come. The hitbox on it is great. It's disjointed. It has like no recovery, only 15 frames. It's active for 6 frames. It's pretty safe on block, only being -7. This Far Slash is really, really good. The only thing that this Far Slash doesn't have for Biken is that she does not have a move to combo off of it meterless on a standing hit. So on Biken, it's actually weaker than it would be for other characters. If you gave this Far Slash to another character that had like a good H button or just like another good special move or something like that, it would be ridiculous. So even though it's super good on Biken, it could be even better on another character, which is kind of wild to think about. This is just like one of the best like scramble buttons in the game because of how fast it is and being relatively disjointed. The only like downsides it has is that it doesn't hit very low to the ground, so some things might kind of low profile it. I know notably like Faust can crawl under her Far Slash, which is kind of spooky for her. But other than that, there's not really any other downsides. It just doesn't reach as far as some other Far Slashes. So that's really the only thing it has going against it. But it's definitely top 5, I think. All right, Jacko's Far Slash. I was trying to think about it earlier today. What Far Slashes are not very good in this game, and there's not very many. Most Far Slashes are honestly like pretty good. It's probably like the highest quality of button overall, I would say. But I think Jacko is one of the characters that does not actually have a particularly good Far Slash. It doesn't really have much going for it. It doesn't reach that far. The frame data on it isn't very good. The hitbox isn't good. It's not even disjointed, first of all. So like, she doesn't have that going for her. It's 11 frames, which is just very average. -9 on block, which is kind of bad for some reversals because some reversals will punish it on block. It just doesn't do anything. Like, it's not bad. It's just compared to every other Far Slash, it has no positives. It doesn't do anything better than any other Far Slash. It doesn't have great frame data. It doesn't have a great hitbox. It isn't disjointed or anything. It's just a Far Slash. It is the most just painfully average description of what a Far Slash is in Guilty Gear Strive. Chip, huh? Just going off of my feeling without really looking into the move. I actually thought it was top 5. And like, you could tell me that you think it is. I do think it is really good when you go into the frame data of the move because it is 9 frame startup, which I value 9 frame startup Far Slashes a lot. I think it's pretty good. And the range on it is actually really good. Like, it reaches really far, especially when you pair it with his movement speed. However, it's not disjointed. And in fact, it has a pretty extended hurt box on the startup of the move. So it is susceptible to getting stuffed by other buttons in neutral. However, for a character like Chip, it doesn't really matter as much because he's so fast. It's so risky to try to contest him at any point anyways. The only other things that's not really good about it is that it has a little higher amount of recovery and only 2 active frames is pretty bad. But I think the range of the move, plus the fact that it's 9 frames, and it hits really high. If your Far Slash hits high up, it gets a little bit of a bonus point for me because it means that jumping is just weaker naturally against your character. And usually jumping is something that you kind of have to be concerned about when you're thinking about pressing a Far Slash. So if your Far Slash hits vertically pretty high up, then it's a little bit better in neutral because you might catch somebody like on their way up, or you might catch them on their way down. So I think he has that going for him as well. It's one of the better round start options in the game as well, which is something you kind of have to consider with Far Slashes. So I don't think it's top 5 like I originally felt like it was, but it's definitely up there for sure, I think. Gold Lewis? Okay, I actually don't know much about Gold Lewis. I know what my heart tells me. And my heart tells me that this button is broken because every time I get hit by it, he combos into Behemoth and then I lose. But the button is probably not particularly outstanding. 10 frame startup is pretty good though. Being faster than 11 is always a plus. Oh, and it actually is disjointed. Hold up. -7 on block. It goes pretty far forward. He also moves forward when he does it, right? If I'm not mistaken. It actually is pretty good then. And he's also a tall character, so it hits pretty high in the air. I guess like the problem is like it doesn't hit very low, so it kind of gets low profiled by a lot of things. Like a lot of 2S's, a lot of 2Ks, 2Ds, stuff like that probably go under it fairly consistently. I don't know. I feel like it is actually pretty good. Just being 10 frame startup and having disjoint like that is already like grounds for being pretty strong, I think. It doesn't have that high of recovery, like it's under 20, so it's not too bad. Do I put it up here? Is it actually that good? That's a pretty good Far Slash. Bridget, huh? So Bridget's kind of hard to rank because again, she is still kind of newer at this point. She might be top 5 though. Her Far Slash has one particular problem, as we know, and that is the fact that it's not actually disjointed that much. It's only disjointed at the very tip of the yo-yo. So it's still very likely to get hit by 6p, still very likely to just get stuffed in general. But being 10 frame startup and having 5 active frames, I think is pretty good. The other issue, I guess, is like it's -9. So again, it's like sort of bad against like some reversals on block, but you would just cancel into another move. So it's not really that problematic. Also, when it comes to Bridget, something I have to point out is that I am considering the Far Slash follow-up that she has, because I'm also going to be considering the Far Slash follow-up that Nago has. So just to be consistent, I'm also considering the follow-up the move has, which is honestly not that important for Bridget because it's just another button, right? Like you could just basically say it's another H button, but she does have it and it is nice. It knocks down, which could be relevant for some characters if you gave this Far Slash to somebody else. So yeah, I do think it is pretty high up on the list for sure. I think like it's just kind of weird because it is a very fragile move. Like when it comes to Bridget's neutral, like you do see it getting stuffed a lot in matches, but you also see how much space that move controls. So that, along with being 10 frame startup, it has to be pretty good, I think. Zato, I might be bugging about this, but I don't think his Far Slash is that good. When it comes to Zato's Far Slash, there's like one big problem that comes to my mind immediately. And that is the problem that most of Zato's normals have, which is the fact that it's not disjointed, and in fact the hurt box is ginormous. However, it is 10 frame startup, which is relevant. -12 on block is pretty bad though, and 23 frames of recovery is pretty bad. The only other thing I think that this Far Slash has going for it outside of being 10 frame startup is it hits really high. So it has that thing I was talking about with Chip where like it actually calls out like jump startup pretty well. Like you might catch somebody like on the way up in neutral, which I think is pretty good. But I think the hurt box is just really not good on this move, and it has a lot of recovery, so it's very susceptible to getting whiff punish. And not being good on block, I think, makes it pretty bad. Like, when you think about it, like, I think his Far Slash is, again, it's good, because I think most Far Slashes are pretty good, but compared to the other Far Slashes, it's not really that good, I think. But I think it's better than something like Jacko's, because it has a little faster startup, it hits the air a little bit better, so you might catch jump startup, and it's a little bit more active because it's multi-hitting. So I think it has some redeeming qualities over some of the other Far Slashes that will be below it. Soul bad guy, huh? So Soul's Far Slash obviously has the benefit of being the only Far Slash that's plus on block. I'm just going to put it here for now while we talk about it. And it is also an advancing move, which makes it pretty valuable, I think, for a lot of different situations. 10 frame startup is pretty good. 13 frames of recovery is great. Plus 2 on block is obviously fantastic. It's pretty high on the list, I think. It's just like, I think this Far Slash would be a lot better if you have a move that complemented it more. So like, I think we actually have to put it really high on the list. The funny thing is that Soul's other moves don't complement it as well. Like, I think if you had another move with more range, it becomes way better. If Soul had a better 5/8, for example, like if you put Soul's Far Slash on any other character, like I feel like it would be really good. It's probably worse on Soul than most characters, which is really funny to think about. But it's definitely like one of the better Far Slashes in the game just because it is plus. You get a great combo on counter hit, pretty much every character would, because every character would be able to link off of it. It's very hard to whiff punish in neutral. It's an advancing mid, which could be very useful for some characters. It just does pretty much everything well. It's one of those Far Slashes that I think might end up somewhere in the top 5 range when we break things down. It just, funnily enough, is probably worse on Soul than most characters. Mei Far Slash is also, I think, pretty damn good, just because it's actually huge. Like, her Far Slash is ridiculously big for some reason. I mean, I guess it is literally an anchor, so it makes sense. The only downside to it is that it's slower, like 19 frames of recovery and 12 frame startup is like not the best, but it has that thing going for it again where it hits really high vertically. So it's pretty good at catching people like in the early jump frames, or even like as they're coming down or something. So I think like the range on it alone, plus the fact that it hits so high vertically and it's that disjointed, like it is a very disjointed button, I think makes it like, honestly, I'd probably put it like up here. It's really good. It's just the total frames on the move aren't the best, but that's kind of really its only downside for the most part. And being a 12 frame startup is a little slow. 19 frames of recovery is average, but there are some Far Slashes that have way less, like Souls has 13, for example. So I think it's a notable downside to be at like 19 to 21 is like not great recovery. And then anything below that is good recovery. Anything above that is bad recovery. But yeah, I think her Far Slash is really good. It's like very disjointed, very big, hits very high up. It's just a little on the slower side. That's about it. Happy Chaos is another one of the better Far Slashes for sure. I don't know where I put it exactly. So his Far Slash has a couple things that I think makes it so good. The first one being that it is disjointed, just a little bit, not a lot, but it is disjointed a little bit. It's 10 frame startup and it's active for 7 frames, which is a lot of active frames. However, it does have 20 frame or 21 frames of recovery and is minus 14 on block, which is pretty bad. This is one of the most whiff punishable Far Slashes, I would say. There's a lot of times with his Far Slash that you can make it whiff and like visibly react to it whiffing and whiff punish it, which is pretty hard to do with some of the Far Slashes, right? Like if you see Soul whiff Far Slash, that is much harder to whiff punish on reaction compared to Happy Chaos. And being minus 14 on block is not great either. But I do think the range on the move is great. I think it hitting as high as it does is nice because it catches people out of jump startup. I'd probably put it like here, like somewhere in this group of characters, but it's definitely very strong, I would say. Like maybe it's like a little lower than Chip or something. I don't know, but it's definitely like in this group, I would say. Also, look how like bloated this tier is currently. This is what I mean about like most of the Far Slashes are actually pretty good. I might take the task of lowering some of these Far Slashes a little bit later. Like what you have to ask yourself with this type of tier list is like you have to compare it to other characters. Like when I think about it that way, like High's Far Slash is just not as good. And frankly, when I think about it that way, Happy Chaos's is also not that good. Faust, I'm gonna move it down, but it's definitely the best of build different. Okay, we got our thoughts in line. We now know what we're talking about. So this is why tier lists like this are fun, because you get to kind of like think about the game and like get different perspectives on things. And now, you know, maybe the way you approach dealing with some of these moves might end up different because how we analyze things now. Now we have a different approach and understanding of all these moves. And that's why tier lists like this are fun. That's why I like doing these. Eno's Far Slash, we actually just looked at that one before we started doing the tier list, and I gotta say I was not super impressed. The best thing this move has going for it is its range. Like it reaches really far actually, and it's obviously very disjointed. However, it's very, very thin. This is like the thinnest Far Slash in the game. 13 frame startup is pretty bad. 8 active frames is actually pretty good though, but minus 13 on block is not the best. That's pretty bad, I would say. It's like a very like niche type of Far Slash. I think it actually does have some good qualities to it, but being 13 frame startup, I feel like is just really alarming. Like that's pretty bad. And like, I think for some other characters, there might be some merit to it, but if you want a disjointed Far Slash, you would just pick a different disjointed Far Slash, you know? Like, it's realistically not that great. So I feel like I would put it like somewhere down here. It just has a lot of range, which is nice, but there's other buttons that have a lot of range and that aren't 13 frame startup. I guess the active frames are nice too, but the hitbox being that thin is pretty bad. So yeah, I don't think her Far Slash is spectacular. Testament Far Slash is, to no one's surprise, another one of the top 5 Far Slashes in the game. This Far Slash is just like ridiculous. Now that they made it disjointed, it's everything you could have asked for in a Far Slash, basically. The only downside is that it's not as disjointed as something like Ram Far Slash, and it's 12 frame startup instead of 11, but this move has dummy range. This move's range is like ridiculous. It reaches so far. 18 frames of recovery is like still pretty good. It's under 20, so it's still kind of hard to whiff punish on reaction. Only minus 7 on block is really nice because it's just very safe. It's just a crazy Far Slash. Like when you think of a spacing tool, this is one of your first thoughts. It's ridiculous. Yeah, this Far Slash is like the ideal spacing tool pretty much. It's like this and, you know, spoilers, one other Far Slash that I'm sure you all already are thinking about that should be on this list. Nago. Okay, so again, when it comes to Nago, I am considering the Far Slash follow-ups, because if you don't consider the follow-ups, the move's actually pretty bad, I think. Like, if you took out the Far Slash and the third follow-up, it just becomes very, very not great. Like 14 frames to start up, by the way, for the case of this Discussion, I'm going to be considering level 2. I'm not going to consider the other numbers. So 14 frame startups on the slower side, 28 frames of recovery, and minus 17 on block. It's awful. The thing that makes this move really good is the fact that he has the follow-ups on the move. And if you have the follow-ups, it becomes pretty good. I still don't think it's top 5 though. Maybe some people would disagree with me. I think it's in contention for top 5. Although, okay, this move's actually weird. Hold on. You'd have to think about this move with other characters' special moves though. Because like, if you had other special moves and you didn't have the blood limiter, this move would be insane. I guess it is top 5. This move is really hard to rank, okay? I'm just gonna say that. It is a really hard move to rank. Because there's a lot of things you have to consider in terms of how the character works mechanically. Because there's so many different numbers that you'd have to pay attention to. You'd have to pay attention to, like, this move without blood gauge is really weird. I guess also, like, does it do chip damage if it's not on Nago? I guess it does, right? Because it's not a Nago thing, it's this move in particular. So I guess just because the move's hard to rank and it's obviously probably pretty good, I'll just put it in top 5. So congratulations, Nago. You made it top 5 again. Angie? Okay, Angie is another Far Slash that I think is just underwhelming in almost every regard. When you look at the move's frame data, it has literally nothing going for it. Like, it's a Far Slash. I think the range on it is pretty decent. I think the hitbox is pretty decent. It's a little bit disjointed. It's not the most, but I think it's pretty good. It's 11 frame startup, which is like, okay, you know, that's pretty average. You got 21 frames of recovery. It's pretty eh. Minus 9 on block. It's pretty eh. Only active frames is 2. It just, like, it's a Far Slash. Like, you can't say it's bad, but in comparison to other Far Slashes, it does nothing. And yeah, they have buffed this move twice. It used to be, like, way worse on block. It was so weird. I think it was also slower too. I think it was like 12 frames or 13 frames or something. Yeah, Angie's Far Slash is just unredeeming. It's like, it's a Far Slash. It has range. That's about it. Leo? I don't think Leo's Far Slash is that great, is it? Hold on, I'm just gonna put it there for now while we look into it. I'm pretty sure it's not like that great, actually. Like, it's not, yeah, it's 12 frame startup. It's not disjointed, 21 frames of recovery, minus 13 on block. It's pretty whatever. I'm gonna not count these follow-ups. Even if you did, I don't think it would rank it that much higher. So yeah, I think his Far Slash is pretty just like, whatever. Like, it's probably like here. Like somewhere tied with Auto just about. It's a pretty unremarkable Far Slash. Actually, should it be lower? I think it should be lower. Like, when you think about it, I mean, it's got range, I guess. Yeah, I feel like you gotta put it lower. I like hate putting a Leo move this low, but yeah, that's not a very good move. Wow. Who would have thought? Leo Far Slash is one of the worst Far Slashes. Crazy. I mean, like, when I think about Leo neutral, I definitely don't think about Far Slash. I think about like 5K, 6P, 2D, 5H even. Definitely not a good move. Axel. Okay, Axel, I think, is our 4th member of top 5. I think this Far Slash is busted, bro. I feel like nobody talks about this move. But this move is actually crazy good. And especially on like what he does in neutral, I feel like it's kind of insane that he even has this move to begin with. 10 frame startup. This is the first reason why I think this move is actually crazy. It's not even just has the range or anything, it's 10 frames. Like, when you look at the other Far Slashes, like when you look at like Testament, like theirs is 12 frames, right? Like, usually these Far Slashes that have range, they're usually like 11 or 12. But for Axel, his is 10. That's ridiculous. That's really good. 19 frames of recovery is like pretty average, whatever. Minus 8 on block is pretty good. It's safe. And then the hitbox on it is insane. This move is so disjointed and it hits so far. And also hits pretty low, so you can't like low profile it with anything. You know, you're not going to go under it with like a 2K or something. It is a very, very good button. One of like the best round start options, I think, and one of the best just space control tools in the game, for sure. I think it's definitely really strong. I would probably put it up here, honestly. It might honestly be better than Testament. The big difference between Testament and Axel is that, like, Testament has more range than Axel's, I think. And it is a little bit better on block, and I guess whiff. Yeah, it probably is better than Testament. Honestly, like, low-key, it might be the best Far Slash in the game. Like, low-key. Like, once we have all the characters up there, we can address things and kind of reassess where some of the characters should be. Somebody give me another character. All right, we're gonna do Potemkin next. Potemkin's Far Slash is pretty bad. The only thing it really has going for it, I think, is obviously it's big because it's a Potemkin move. But I think that it's very low profilable, like very low profilable. A lot of things go under this. And just being that slow, not being disjointed, it just doesn't have like a lot of redeeming qualities because he as a character is like so big and like it's not disjointed. So like he tries to stick out his hand and it just runs into other buttons all the time. The only thing I can say that has going for it outside of just being big is that it hits pretty high up. So it has that thing going for it again where it's pretty hard to jump over it. But I just find it to be like really whiff punishable. I find it really easy to stuff. It obviously loses the 6 Ps. You can low profile it. Like, I just don't think it's very good. Yeah, hitting high is like a blessing and a curse. Like, yeah, it stops jumps, but also it sucks really bad at calling out any low hitting move. So I think it's just not super great. Honestly, it might be a little higher, but I just don't think it's that good. All right, we're just going to do Milia next because we only have 2 characters left anyways. Milia Far Slash is pretty hard to rate, I think. I do think it is much better this patch than it was previously. Just because of the fact that it's 9 frame startup, I think is really good for her. 9 frame startup is pretty nice. 9 frames of recovery is pretty average. -7 on block is pretty good though. This, I don't know what it's talking about, by the way. We were looking at this earlier. I don't know what it means by frames 27 through 30 are head and ball. Like, it might be true. I have no idea why it would be, though. That just seems very strange. It probably is true. It's probably some random thing that just made it into the game, and they've never taken it out. I don't know. It's weird, though. But it's not disjointed, obviously. It honestly doesn't really go that far or anything. The main strength of the move is that it's on a fast character, so she can, like, move into range to use it pretty well. I think on, like, other characters, though, it wouldn't stand out as much because they're not as fast. But I do think it still is pretty good. Like, I feel like it has to be, like, up here somewhere, right? Like, I feel like it's in this tier for sure. I think just being 9 frames and having, like, the frame data that it does makes it pretty good. Just in general. Maybe it's, like, the low end, just since it doesn't have that much range. But I do think it is a pretty good button. It could, like, maybe go higher. I feel like it doesn't go that far, though. Maybe on another character with, like, a better 5H, it would be better as well. It is one of the better round start options because it's 9 frames, which I think is very valuable. All right, I'll put it here. It's somewhere like in this group of characters though, for sure. All right, then we have the last character. Everybody already knows it's Ram. She definitely goes up here. Whether she's like the best Far Slash or not, I don't really know. There's a couple characters you could say is the best Far Slash. But her Far Slash is pretty much like, when you think about Far Slash in Guilty Gear Strive, you're going to think of Ram's Far Slash. Because this move is hilarious. 11 frame startup, again, pretty average. 21 frames is actually a little on the slower side, and it's -10 on block, which is not great. 6 active frames is pretty good though, and this move has so much range and is like one of the most disjointed buttons in the game. Being this disjointed is like actually insane. Compared to even like Testament. Like Testament's Far Slash is not as disjointed as Ram's when you look at it. Ram also technically has the benefit of her Far Slash hits higher up than a lot of the other Far Slashes. Of course, it's only around her hand that this happens, but I still think it's pretty relevant. It's like somewhere in this group. Again, I think there's like there's argument that like all of these Far Slashes have something that could be said that makes them better than the others. So I don't know if there's like a definitive top 1 Far Slash, but I think all of these 5 here have some argument that would put them in top 5. Nago's you could say is the best, again, depending on how you want to look at the follow-ups and everything. It's a really hard move to rank. Vikings is like the best like scramble button in the game. Very, very fast, great hitbox for what it is. Would be even better on another character, frankly. And then you have like these 3, which are all really good just spacing Far Slashes. And they all have different pros and cons to them compared to the others. I mean, the main thing about Testament Far Slashes is not as disjointed. So, but again, I think you could rank these in any order and I think it would be understandable. So I think this is probably what I would do for this list. This is probably how I'd rank it currently. It's kind of funny, when we got down to it, I feel like Far Slashes were harder to rank than 6Ps just because there's like so many different variables to a Far Slash in terms of like their startup. Like the difference between 9 and 10 is actually a huge difference because Far Slashes have a very important role at the start of a game for like round start interactions. So I think ranking these is actually pretty hard, and I don't think that there's like a definitive like, yeah, these are the best, right? Like I think generally everyone's kind of in agreement that like these are amongst the best ones, but you could definitely make an argument for a lot of the other Far Slashes going up or down for sure. Of course, because it is so variable on opinions, I'm definitely curious to know what you all think. Let me know down in the comments below. Do you agree with the list? Do you disagree? What are your own takes on all of these? If you guys want to come out and hang out with us on Twitch, you can do that. You can find a link to that below in the description. You can be around when we do our next tier list, which definitely let me know what moves you would like me to do a tier list of next. I've been thinking about doing a tier list for 2Ks, but if you'd like to see me do a different move, let me know in the comments for sure. Also, you can join our community Discord. You can find that in the description below as well. That's it. I think that's going to do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.